All right, hey VC, we are back once again with another edition. First off, I want to say hi to Steve Carlson, and Steve, so great to hear from you. Steve was commenting on my last video about the Canadian band Max Webster, and Steve was saying he wasn't familiar with Max Webster. What album should he start with? Checking out the band, and I had recommended their second album, High Class and Borrowed Shoes. And Steve also certainly stated something that I totally agree with. That's the great thing about the VC, the vinyl community, that it's going to expose you to groups and albums that you've likely never heard of. And that's the beauty of these YouTube videos and the whole VC vinyl community, that you're going to get exposed to different, and I know I've been exposed to lots of different bands that I wasn't familiar with initially. So that's the beauty of it, and I totally agree, Steve. And you can check out Steve Carlson's YouTube channel. It is very informative and very entertaining as well. It's Vinyl Community Steve Carlson, so you can check that out. Okay, so let's check out some vinyl, see what we got. I just picked up this album. This is absolutely one of my all-time favorites. I've had it on CD, and I've never owned a vinyl copy. This absolute masterpiece, I cannot say enough about this album, from 1967, the Moody Blues, Days of Future Past. So as you can see, this is a Canadian or North American pressing, because it includes that, which wasn't on the original UK cover, and then it's on London Records, Durham London label. But an absolute masterpiece. When you talk about what was coming out in 1967 from the UK, when you got Sgt. Pepper's, also Magical Mystery Tour, you've got Pink Floyd's first album, and then this one as well from 1967. And the Moody Blues, going from, this is their second album, going from R&B covers, R&B sound, into this, where they're with the London Festival Orchestra, conducted by Peter Knight, moving rock and popular music in a completely different way, completely different form. Just a masterpiece. When you got Nights in White Satin, Tuesday Afternoon, Peak Hour, just a terrific record. Can't say enough about this one. And I had picked up the anniversary issue that they had on CD. This is a CD and DVD package, which is actually really great. It's 2 CDs and then 1 DVD. So they have the original 1967 stereo mix, and then they have the 1972 stereo mix. Tons of bonus tracks with performances at the BBC, and then on the DVD they include some live performances of Peak Hour, Tuesday Afternoon, and Nights in White Satin, and also a 5.1 surround sound. I do like this package overall. They fill up the CDs and it looks great. I just think that this album deserved a bigger box set, if you will, and the poster inside this is quite nifty. I just think this album really deserved one of those massive, great box sets, maybe like with the vinyl, DVD, and CD. So here's the poster, which is kind of neat, and then on the back, lots of pictures of the singles. 45 RPMs. But in terms of bang for your buck, this is a great package overall. Okay, so we got some more vinyl. Here's a group that, it's one of those groups I think I should have known a lot about, but I'm kind of slowly discovering this great band, Gentle Giant, and just picked this one up quite inexpensively, to my surprise. This is Gentle Giant, The Power and the Glory. And I think for me, this is my only Gentle Giant on vinyl, and I think this is actually a good place to start. And as you can see, this has got the original rounded corners, and nice to see that it also includes the original inner sleeve. But just a great prog rock band. Really enjoying Gentle Giant. If you have any recommendations about where else I can turn to in terms of other great Gentle Giant albums, please let me know. I think Octopus is obviously a big one, but it's a band I'm kind of discovering and liking everything I'm hearing. Gentle Giant. Love that cover too. Okay, some Canadian content. For whatever reason, Lighthouse seems to be coming up in the videos, and I came across to this one, which I have rarely seen. Lighthouse, there's a lot of glare on this one. This is the first album from Lighthouse from 1969. And this features original vocalist Pinky Davin. Now, when you hear the hits like Sunny Days and whatnot, that's with their later vocalist Bob McBride. But Pinky Davin was on their first 3 albums. And this is a great debut. This has their cover of the Byrds' 8 Miles High. But they are really smoking on this one. It's a great, great debut, great album. Again, all the horns, great guitar work, great vocals overall. On the RCA label, they went to the GRT label after the first 3 or 4 albums. And incidentally, Howard Shore was an original member of this group, playing alto sax, and Howard Shore then would later go on to play in the Saturday Night Live house band. The initial house band would also play with the Blues Brothers band, and then later would score lots of movie soundtracks, including The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit movies. That's Howard Shore from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. There you go. So that's Lighthouse, first album. Really good debut. Okay, we've got some live in concert stuff. This is Three Dog Night, captured live at the Forum. And this was only their 3rd album. They had 2 studio albums before this, and they were recording this. They were reportedly out on tour with Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was recording for their live album from a variety of shows, so they also decided to record Three Dog Night as well. Overall, it's a good album, and this is an early pressing because it has this statement on top that says, in front of an audience of over 18,000 on September 12th, 1969 in Los Angeles. I guess later pressings, they took that off. There was some discrepancy as the actual date, if it was in September or in July, but I guess later pressings, they don't have that up top. But it's got a few of their hits, Easy to Be Hard, One, Eli's Coming. They do a cover of the band's Chest Fever on this one. I do like the announcer at the beginning that introduces them as one of the hardest bands in America. But yeah, Three Dog Night, one of the hardest bands in America. But having said that, they're rocking pretty good on this one. And it's just a single album. It's not a double album, but it is a gatefold. I can show you the inside. On the Dunhill label. Nice pictures there. And yeah, I'll just quickly show you the sleeve here. Yeah, on the classic Dunhill label. So there you go, Three Dog Night. Now the band Genesis. Certainly for early Genesis, there's some very odd best ofs or repackaging of some of their early work. I had never seen this one before. The Best of Genesis, they're calling this, and as you can see, it's early Genesis. Some interesting artwork, or incorporated artwork, of course, Peter Gabriel there, and in the back, some interesting artwork, and of course, Phil Collins there, Steve Hackett, Tony Banks, and I guess that's Mike Rutherford? I'm not quite sure. Peter Gabriel, of course. And as you can see, it's got, Supper's Ready. At first glance, it's a double album. But then, as you can see by the song listings, if you take a closer look, it is really just a repackaging of Nursery Crime and Foxtrot. So it's just those 2 albums, but they're calling it The Best of Genesis. This is a Canadian pressing, a Canadian compilation. Show you the inside here with newspaper clippings of the band. And then this write-up from Nancy Lewis, whoever she is, telling you all about the great things of Genesis. This came out in 1976, so again, looking at the early days of Genesis. But, yeah. And this is on the Buddha label under GRT in Canada. And I can quickly show you the... So there you go. Oop, on the Buddha label, there we go. Okay, so yeah, something a little different. It plays really well, though, and it's good sound quality, so it's not a cheap knockoff by any stretch, so it is quite good that way. A couple of solo albums. Picked up Stephen Stills, his first solo album. What a terrific record when you have Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton guesting on this one. Love the One You're With, the big hit from this. Stephen Stills, great singer and great guitarist. In a terrific debut. And speaking of which, Graham Nash, Songs for Beginners. Always really enjoyed this album, and Big Star 1000 talks about this album. I've had this on CD, but this is the first time I'm picking it up on vinyl. And again, extraordinary musicians on this one. On the song, I Used to Be a King, which I think is just a wonderful song. He's got performing on there, Jerry Garcia is featured on that one. And overall, it's got some great songs, Some of the songs included I Used to Be a King, as I mentioned, Military Madness, Simple Man, also Chicago, and We Can Change the World. This one came with an insert, which I was pleased to see. So you have so there's that, and then with the lyrics there. So Graham Nash, Songs for Beginners, which is a really great album. And Graham Nash sometimes doesn't get the credit for writing protest songs that he did. Neil Young tends to get a little bit more of the credit, but Graham Nash, again, he's got a lot of the ballads like Our House, but to be fair, Graham Nash wrote some great songs overall. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this edition. I will say happy Thanksgiving. This will be Thanksgiving weekend for those of us here in Canada. So happy Thanksgiving, and my son's going to be visiting this weekend. So we'll chat after the long weekend, and have a good one. Bye-bye.